Good afternoon, faculty members. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine, fine. So we will be starting in a short while. And the weather outside is very pleasant. It's raining in Jaipur. And also, we could expect a power cut anytime. So please bear with us. We'll be back in 2-3 minutes. If at all there is any power cut. And this session, we will have Dr. Anuja Pandey with us. So we are all waiting for her to join. So once she joins, we will start exactly at 1:30 p.m. if everything goes fine. Thank you once again, all of you for joining. Good afternoon, all faculty members. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you for your response. We are just waiting for the session speaker to join. I just had a word with her. She is into some meeting. She is finishing that meeting, and immediately then she will come and join our meeting. So, short while ago, okay. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. It's a pleasure to see you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah, just hold on, ma'am. Let me see. Let me make you co-host. Yeah, you have okay. Anuja Pandey. Yes, ma'am. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very
Okay.
much.
Yeah. You would like to check something, or we can simply start now?
We can start, sir.
Fine. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. So, dear all faculty members, good afternoon and welcome back. As from today morning, we are working on the theme research, and for this session, we have with us Dr. Anuja Pandey, ma'am, from Center for Management Education, All India Management Association, Delhi. Ma'am, first of all, I would like to welcome you for this session. And at the same time, I am really thankful to you for accepting our invitation and for for being the resource person for this session. Thank you so much, ma'am. Before I hand over the session to you, I would like to introduce you to all the faculty members who have joined all across India. So, dear faculty members, we have with us today Dr. Anuja Pandey. She is an associate professor in Center for Management Education, All India Management Association in Delhi. She is currently the head of IMA India Case Research Center. She is a faculty trainer, consultant, and a researcher. Dr. Anuja ma'am is a managing editor of IMA's Journal of Management and Research. She's also faculty in charge of IMA's courses in business analytics and digital marketing and analytics. Her teaching experience is in the area of marketing management, consumer behavior, advertising and brand management, digital marketing, sales and distribution, marketing research, services marketing, international marketing and communication. She has published a good number of papers in international and national journals. She is also author of 3 books. She has presented several research papers at national and international forum, and also she is supervising PhD students from her institute. So it's really a pleasure for all of us to have such a distinguished faculty and an expert with us as a resource person for this session. Thank you so much, ma'am. Over to you, Dr. Anuja Pandey, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. I think it's very kind of you to introduce me, and I'm really obliged for the kind introduction and for the invitation to be in the part of this prestigious FDP program, which has been done by your university. And I believe a lot of you who have joined us today are also from some of the leading colleges and university departments across India. So it's a great pleasure to be here. And I'm really happy to see that you've got already 36 participants have joined in for this afternoon session, though I know being first an afternoon session, it's quite tough.
Right.
Secondly, the afternoon session in online mode is even tougher.
Mhm.
So really, before I start and I really talk about it, it would be a great idea if we can have all of you online for 1 minute with your all videos switched on, so that we can have a little understanding as to who all are really awake at this point in time. So request you all to switch on your cameras. It will be really good. Thank you, Dr. Rajesh. I think you are from the engineering department, I believe. Dr. Vidya, nice to see you here, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. And I can see a couple of you are still in the process of switching on your cameras. Welcome, Dr. Madhvi, Dr. Snelata, Dr. Singh, Dr. Krishna Raj, Dr. Yogesh, Dr. Aparna, Dr. Usha. Great, great. So at least this gives me a little idea as to we have some of the people who are awake in the session, and others I will try my best to really make them sure that they ignite to this concept. So a very, very warm welcome to this interesting session. On which we are trying to do here, primarily to make you all go through a very small concept, which though is now an emerging concept, and we are talking about how this whole concept of cases are emerging, and how we would these things are now becoming interesting part of our classroom discussion. So when we talk about this whole workshop, when I spoke to Dr. Mukesh, I said that maybe let's talk about something which is from the morning people have been talking about the research part of it. Let me talk something which is a little more onto the research and also on the teaching part. So I thought I'll just very quickly, I'll take you through what exactly is there for us. I think I do not have the co-host, right? So I can't share the screen. So if you can make me a co-host.
Ma'am, I made you the co-host.
Okay, but I don't see
You have joined with Dr. Anuja Pandey. I have made you the co-host.
I have the co-host, right? And let me see, but I'm not able to now. Okay, okay.
Right.
So great, great. I've just got this one. So let me talk about what we are going to cover today, and how are these things scheduled for you for 1.5 hours that we are there with you. I'm sure in the morning you had a very fantastic session, which would have been around the research methods. And apart from research methods, we also talk about some of the emerging trends where a lot of our faculty members are now getting inclined or interested into. And this is where we are talking about the case workshops and the case study development. Over a period of time,
Hello.
Yeah, please wait. I think there's some obstruction from man's side.
She's muted. Can someone inform her?
you can hear me. I hope
Yeah.
all of you can hear me. So
Yeah.
what has happened? Thank you. So what generally we say, we give a lot of importance to research papers. And generally we believe that cases are something which are a little easier to do, and maybe a lot of research is not needed. And probably this is not as strong as research paper. So a lot of time, this is something which is highly underrated in India. And but when it comes to a faculty and faculty's major role as a person in an academic institute, primary role is teaching. But I'm sure most of you would appreciate that, and especially those coming from the management side, we were taught. So we were taught a lot of theories, and over a period of rejected this idea that whatever you are teaching, if it is too theoretical in the class, they don't really changes have been brought in, and probably this is where the cases started coming fitting into in the process, that if you want to really increase the interaction into the classroom, if you want to increase the level of teaching learning into the classroom, probably case method is one of the most proven method of teaching. I think Harvard had already talked about it, and probably if you look into over a period and everything, I have a chat here, so that's why I'm trying to check. I hope all of you can hear me.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, but sometimes that voice is breaking.
Voice is breaking, so I'll do one thing. I'll in the meantime I'll switch on my video in that, if that helps. So maybe the bandwidth would then stabilize. Right. So do let me know if at any point there is some voice gap or something, so that I can just do the corrections. So we were talking about the cases. So we know that Harvard has been pioneer into really giving up the cases and giving up the case idea. And 30 years after a student has passed through a classroom, he still remembers the cases which were discussed, and especially the cases which were quite controversial, or the cases where a lot of dilemma was there and probably engagements happened into the classroom. So these are some of the best learning things which a student remembers from a classroom activity. And this is where we found that cases are also very strong, because they're able to bring in a lot of practical aspects into the classroom. So whatever we have been talking about the models, maybe when we talk about the organization development model, or we talk about the models which have been proposed by a lot of management professors, maybe the Maslow model, or when we talk about the 4P model, or when we talk about various other models of 7 S's, or maybe the SWOT model, or maybe the pestle analysis, all of these models, when they are taught in the classroom where a student is applying these models, these are models which a student then finds it far more relevant. And that is where we are talking about bringing up the theory and matching the theory with the practical aspect of it. And probably this is one of the key merit where we have been trying to really use up cases where all these models which we teach in a classroom ideally are experimented, used by a student, and then he himself finds a merit for this model, and probably then finds it's okay, now this is how the theoretical concepts are set around a particular model. So this is where we are, and at the same time, a lot of time when we are teaching in a classroom, the concepts might actually may be coming from various places, and these are very divergent ideas which might be coming, but all of them are actually leading to one core concepts. So with the case, we are able to bring this coherence and the divergence into a subject. That is where the beauty of cases comes into. So we have over a period of time, we have been doing a lot of cases, and we have understood that case is a very strong element for learning. And at IMA, what we actually did was, when we were started looking into cases, I belong to All India Management Association, and I'm sure most of you know about IMA. So when we were with were looking into IMA and as far as cases are concerned, we had a lot of options as to how we would be looking into and taking up cases to Indian management community. And then we thought that maybe this is a time when we set up a case research center at IMA, which is not only a center for development of cases, but where we teach the faculty to take up their journey as a facilitator into a classroom. So this is where we wanted to bring a change into the classrooms. We wanted to really see how a faculty can be really given a chance to really discover themselves through cases. And this is where we have been trying to do a lot of interesting opportunities have emerged, and we are doing a lot of workshops and training programs around it. So when it comes to case teaching, so this is something which is very, very close to me, and also one of my key roles at IMA, where we are talking about that probably teaching is something which is an art and also a science. Everybody cannot be a good teacher. All of us might have passed out from very good institution, but that doesn't mean that everybody turns out to be a good teacher. Secondly, those who are really good in research does not really mean that they would be equally good in teaching. How many of you agree with my statement that all of us who are really good in research may not be equally good in teaching? Those who believe with it, just put in a yes into the chat box. Great. So we have the same. We are at the same wavelength as far as this concept is concerned. That a lot of time we have got very, very good researchers, excellent researchers, but these excellent researchers are not excellent teachers. And why is it? Because probably in India we do not really teach, or we do not have any system where we have a teaching course for faculty. I mean, generally for a school, when you're applying for a school, you have a teacher training program, but for a management or engineering college, generally we do not have that. And it is only through FDPs that we actually grow through it. So it's very, very important to understand that how we bring up more relevance to our teaching, and how do we really enhance into our journey as a faculty member. And that is where we're talking about that how we need to assess the teaching learning condition of an organization or the institution at which we are. A lot of time, what happens is that the institute, we are working in multiple type of institutions, and all of the institutions are coming with a very, very different background. Some of them are very hardcore government institutions where there have been a very classical way of teaching. There have been some of the schools which have emerged as into the state private sector, and there are completely private organizations. So we find a lot of varieties into the institutions in which we are teaching. So a lot of culture of the institution also influences that how the teaching would happen into a particular type of setup. But as a faculty member, our task is to understand as to what exactly is going to shape up our teaching process. We need to understand our learners. We need to understand our own strengths and weaknesses as an educator, and we need to understand the strengths and weaknesses of our students into the classroom. So generally, when we look into the institution or the situation where we say where the institution in which we are teaching, the program in which we are teaching, and the topic and the subject we are teaching, there would be a lot of variations which would come in. Say, for example, when I am teaching into a institution which is primarily a private institute, and which is where I'm teaching a management program, and in a management program I'm teaching a marketing lesson, I can bring lot of cases into the classroom, because marketing is something which is more a case-oriented thing, where you have organizations which are giving you live leads. Every day there is something happening. So you have something to talk about it. So I can talk about how the IPL auctions happened and how the IPL auction is going to influence the brand launches into IPL. And I can talk about so many other things which would be around the IPL thing as far as marketing is concerned. But if I'm teaching at this point, if I'm instead of teaching marketing, I'm teaching a subject like basic accounting practices, then probably a lot of theory has to really come in, because this is something which where I'm trying to put in the theoretical foundation and trying to make sure that student is able to understand them and actually practically apply them. So we always say do a very quick assessment about the situation in which you are. Secondly, understand what is your strength and weakness. All of us may not be, as I said, may not be good researchers. All of us cannot be excellent teachers in a classroom, because classroom teaching is a lot on to the knowledge that you have and how you express the knowledge. So basically, classroom is a more of a theoretical, a theater performance, where you are the chief actor and you need to really deliver something which catches the attention of the student, and student then recognizes your knowledge and respects you because of the knowledge and expertise that you have. And thirdly, we need to understand what is the level of our student. So when you talk about the level of the students, this is something which is very, very critical, because a lot of time we believe that we might have passed out from some of the finest institutions in India, or maybe from the finest institution of the world. But my student, my learner is of not that quality. He is coming to a state private university. That means that already he's a screened out person, and he's not one of the toppers into that category. And probably he might not be the creamiest of all the students, the brightest of all the students. And if you are teaching into again a government department, a management department of a government university, again this student might have come here because first he had some merit, he qualified an examination, and secondly probably his affordability for going to a very premier institution was not there. So probably this is something which we have to really assess before we really apply as to what is going to be our teaching and learning methodology for that particular institution. Do a very, very quick assessment that really helps us to understand how and what are we going to do in a classroom. So when you talk about cases are still very, very strong tool to really discuss in any of those scenarios. But the type of case, the length of the case, the quality of the case, the complexity of the case would all be very strongly dependent on the learner. And of course, your experience with that particular subject. So what we generally find is a lot of time, we as faculty members, when we are very, very young into the whole education system, we use cases, but we use cases primarily because we are not prepared for the classroom. So we say, okay, आज एक क्लास लगा देते हैं, टाइम पास हो जाएगा, मेरा 1 घंटे का लेक्चर चला जाएगा, जिसमें आधे घंटे तो बच्चा केस पढ़ेगा, फिर हम आधे घंटे कुछ डिस्कशन कर लेंगे, and my time period to take a class is over. So that is all very common practice with a faculty member who is new to the system and is not, maybe some of the day he's not prepared to take a class. But when you look into cases is the other way around. It is very, very easy to teach a classroom with your own prepared notes, because then you know the journey very well. आपको पता है कि हम क्या पढ़ाने वाले हैं और कैसे पढ़ाने वाले हैं. And you also know major questions and answers which you have to really give, because you would be yourself leading to questions and you are the one who are going to answer for it. क्योंकि आपका already वो एक text prepared है, and very easy to teach through these type of lecture mode, or maybe talking about teaching through a support of a PPT, where you are more or less doing a one-way communication. But the challenge comes in when you start using a case into your classroom, and now you are a senior faculty and you have been into the teaching process, and you have now understood the true merit of teaching through cases, where you realize that two-way communication is very important. Your case is not just a time filling approach, but something which is a teaching learning tool for your student. And probably you already have a very strong fixed agenda which you want to teach through cases. You have got certain concepts that you want to teach through cases. So now this is the time when the teaching becomes a major challenge, because here you have to pick up the right case which fits into your agenda of teaching. You pick up a case which your student can understand and relate. At the same, a case which is not so complex and not so beyond your core area of teaching that you can't handle the questions. Because when you take up a case journey, you have to understand that all of the questions which would be raised into the class, you might not be in a position to answer them. Why? Because this is not your core area. A lot of questions may come from the area which is beyond your core area. You are a HR faculty and the questions are coming in the finance area. Why? Because there was some aspect of finance covered into the case. So you might not be able to really justify those question answers. And that is why the case teaching is something which is to be taken by faculty in a very well prepared manner. So even if those type of question comes in, what should be my approach to handle them? So that is why we say case method is a very, very strong tool. But at the same time, unlike the way we had thought in the beginning of our career, case method is a very advanced tool of teaching and learning, where preparedness of a faculty is very important. At the same time, we learn a lot. Believe me, from the time we have started using cases in the classroom, the type of questions which come in, that type of interaction that happens, every class is a learning activity for me as a faculty. Reason is that my student has the whole universe to think about, raise a question. And that is where some of the time you encounter, okay, you never thought about a problem from this particular perspective. So this is where the merit of case method comes in. Hope the class is there with me.
Yes, ma'am, very much with you.
Yes, ma'am.
So any questions, any queries here? Very quickly, tell me how many of you have are using cases in your classroom. Those who are using cases in the classroom, just put in a yes into the or one into a chat box, because we have already used a yes there. One in the chat box if you are using cases in the classroom. And the case might be of any type. We'll be covering that. Quickly, everyone. Are you using cases in the classroom? If yes, put in one.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon.
Actually, I have a very simple question. Because I'm teaching the BSc, and whatever I have seen is that the students who are actually get admission in the BSc, their knowledge is very poor, which means their basics is not that much clear. And which actually, when I try to teach them normal, like the standard BSc standard chemistry, they're not able to grasp it. So in that case, what should I follow? That is very difficult actually, because in the class you have from mediocre, low, as well as the good students. And when you are trying to follow the good students, you have to teach them bit higher level. And then in the those who doesn't have simple basic knowledge, for example, 10+2 level, they're not able to follow me at all. So how to tackle those kind of situations?
You are a chemistry professor.
Yes, I'm a chemistry professor.
And which area of chemistry do you teach?
Generally organic chemistry.
Organic chemistry. Now, I have been a science student myself, and I will tell you that chemistry is one of the subject which these days I find a lot of students not having the core concept. But chemistry is a very, very interesting subject, and typically organic chemistry is something which is very interesting. But what has happened is that in our schooling system, we have not really created an interest into the subject as such. So what we have really lacked is that, I mean, we have tried to really make them mug up those formulas, but we have not put in the logics of basic chemistry there. So that is where we say that organic is something which is related to what happens to us every day. The food we eat, the body structure that we have, the enzymes that we have, everything has a chemical formula, and something of the benzene structure or with a hydrogen here or a alcohol there would always be there. So it depends upon how you create an interest into a classroom onto that particular idea of this whole concept. So maybe when you look into it, then you really need to have some kind of what we call as caselets, where you talk about it. This guy has taken up food yesterday, and this food was this. Now he's having a major maybe a stomach ache kind of a situation. Though I'm not a chemistry professor, I'm talking about it. What can be the reason for it? So what went wrong? Why was his digestion not happening? So what can be the issues? Why we need to understand that what are proteins, what are fatty acids, and what are the other things. So maybe this is where you need to really bring up a lot of relevances to from their everyday life. Because what we find is that our teaching system has, over a period of time, typically for the science student, it is all about how do you mug up, how do you give your examination, how do you score, and how do you crack a entrance examination. Career into teaching is something which is, making a career into chemistry is something which is very, very tough, and where you have to have very strong, clear-cut foundations. But to bring the student from a very peripheral knowledge to deep knowledge, you need to encourage them with some kind of stories, some kind of concepts which they would want to discover. And maybe that's where we find a lot of good, very interesting websites which have emerged, which have a very creative way of teaching through a lot of interactive tools. So maybe you can start experimenting with that. I hope I've answered that.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. I will try to implement those things. Let's see if they can just come to the normal track. I tried a lot, giving a lot of examples, but they are really reluctant to understand. The problem, whatever I have feel that the students these days, they don't study by themselves. They come to the class and just finish the class. They forget about the class, forget about the study. So that is the most important thing that I have realized. Okay,
Yes.
ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is something which we have to all understand that.
Okay, ma'am.
So I think this is something which we all understand, that being in a classroom is student duty, but learning in the classroom, to make them learn in a classroom, is the faculty duty. So don't expect your students to be really coming prepared in a classroom. Very few students in very few universities really do that.
Okay.
So let's go a little further on it. So this is where we are talking about that over a period of time, we have realized in whatever walks of life that we talk about, maybe infusing reality is something which is very strongly done through cases. Cases can be of various kind. I mean, I had little idea as to how the segregation of group is. So I could find very few of you really responding to my question on, do you use cases in the classroom? So I could get around 7 or 8 who talked about that they have been using some bit of cases. So let me really talk a little more onto how you can use cases and how we can really create the curiosity to learn. So when it comes to cases, we believe in management, we have been doing a lot of use of cases. So I can understand a lot of you have coming from an engineering college background. So maybe this is something which is quite a new concept to most of you. But what we want to really say is that after all, our objective is to make a student learn. And that is where we are talking about, maybe we have to really see how do we infuse reality into their classroom, into the classroom, where we are able to really teach a student very core concepts, core theories, and also the frameworks. because any subject that you pick up would always have some core concepts, theories, and some of the frameworks. And generally, the whole subject is around those core concepts, theories, and the framework. But how do I really make sure that a student gets to closer to these theories, concepts, and frameworks and is able to understand when I say that this is a theory and this is the assumption? How is he able to understand that? Why is it so important to understand the assumption behind a theory? Because any theory that we're talking about is based on certain assumptions. These assumptions are important, or else maybe if these assumptions have not been really understood, a lot of times these theories may not hold true. And that is the time when you feel, ये तो क्या research था, इसमें तो कोई research ही नहीं था. And that is why in your research methods also we always say that beside your framework of study, and also talk about your limitation and also talk about the assumptions. So these are some of the things which we have to really teach a student into a classroom. These frameworks, theories, and concepts have to be taught. And around these, this is where we are trying to create a caselet, depending upon, or maybe a case situation, so that a student is able to relate to the concept, get excited to learn about it. And when he is into active learning process, this is the time when we would create a debate, a controversies around it, so that this debate and controversies brings a lot of interaction into the classroom. So this interaction that we are creating in the classroom is the actual learning which the student would have. Because a lot of time, as we are talking about the one-way communication that we do, we might believe that we have done our task, we have finished our course. In my classroom, my objective of teaching, I had 3 concepts to teach and I've taught all the 3 concepts. So my task is over. But actually my task was not over. I haven't done much about it because student did not learn about it. Because I could to get to know what a student learns only when he has attempted his quiz, assignment, or his interim examination. And by the time his interim examination happens, it is too late. I can't bring him back to the classroom. He might pass with a minimum mark and still he's not understood the subject. So that is where it is very important that these interactions happen before the interim examination or the midterm examination, so that we are able to clear these theories, concepts within the classroom when this particular topic was taught. And that is why we say bring in debate, bring in controversies. Tell them, why do you think this model is correct? Why is there any challenge to the model? If so, what is it? How do you believe that this model would be tested in a current situation? So bring those type of challenges. I mean, you challenge the student so that he becomes interested. This curiosity to learn is very, very important. And what we actually want to do is that we want to increase participants' ability to deal with uncertainties and ambiguities. Because when a student goes from the institution, in the end, in a classroom, in a college, in an institution, he has got all the things which are correct for him. But when he goes to the outer world, he has to really find up his place. And that is where a lot of things might be uncertain. He might know very little about it. And he is completely dealing with uncertain situation. So how does a student handle? How are you making him prepared to handle the uncertainties or ambiguities? This is something which is very, very important. And probably that is where a case method becomes a very important tool to talk about uncertainties and ambiguities. And how do we deal with the ambiguity situation? Say, for example, how many of you have joined in here coming with an engineering background? I mean, teaching up into engineering courses.
Majority of them are from engineering background.
Majority of them are from the engineering background, right? Right. Thank you. I think that helps me to. I mean, I thought this is more of a management discourse, but yes. Now let us talk about from the engineering perspective. Now, when we talk about the engineering students, generally they have their disciplines, their specializations. And what happens is that they all master their specializations. And you know how these days the engineering student learn. I mean, half of them learn through PPTs and the discussions into the classroom, and a lot of video or online learning happens. Books is something which is which is a second stage of learning when they actually enter. So, but all these things that we are teaching into engineering college, a lot of these things would be very, very different for him when he goes to becomes a practicing manager. And probably a lot of ambiguities are there, and he has to understand it from a multiple perspective. But what we have done in our engineering college is we have taught him a core subject. But even if he has learned the core subject, I think we have done a fantastic job, because that was our task, and we have done a fantastic job if he knows the subject well. But how do I understand whether he has learned the subject well? And that is where we want him to understand these concepts from multiple perspectives. So this is one from a perspective, okay, acha ye theory hai. This is a theory, this is a framework. But the second aspect is, how do I apply this particular theory? In which condition this theory works 100%, and what are the conditions where I say this model is a fit model? Is 50% a fit model if 50% of this results are getting, or it's a 60% which is a fit model, or it is a 90%, 99% fit model? So this is something where we have to really make him understand that real world, real situations might be very different, but you have to understand that to what level you would be understanding the fitness of a particular concept. And if this concept doesn't really fit 100%, so how much of ambiguity you can understand into a system? So when we're trying to really use up all these concepts, we are making them to discuss a problem, come closer to a particular issue, ideally what we are actually teaching him, problem solving. So when you talk about problem solving, this is something where we make him understand, first to understand a problem. So when you talk about Indian teaching system, we hardly allow student to raise question in a classroom. And since he's not raising question, so he's got very little ambiguity. But when you allow him to raise question, that is the time when we are actually making him understand a problem from a multiple perspective. And since the questions are coming from multiple perspective, the answers would also be from the multiple perspective. An idea and objective is that a lot of time he might not have a correct answer, but you are there to facilitate him to take the right direction. So your role is not just a faculty member in a classroom, but your role is to take him through, sail him through the concept and make him understand that, okay, this is how you have to look into a problem. So, and what we are trying to do is that this is a very safe environment. Maybe some of the concepts or some of the answers which a student is giving might not be correct, but he is in the classroom itself is able to fall for a wrong answer, but fall in a very, very safe environment where he is nothing to lose, but everything to learn. So he learns what exactly is the correct way to think about a problem. So when you look into our, a lot of time when we are talking about our engineering students, when they come to our management departments, what we actually find is that they may know a theory, but as simple as that. Can you solve me do you know, we ask them a question, do you know Excel? They say, yes, we know Excel, or Excel is such a simple thing. We have been using it for so long. So can you help me to identify these people into an, how do you really do this kind of a concept? Do you know VLOOKUP? Oh, yes, we know that. But are they really able to apply it? This is where we are talking about understanding a issue, understanding a concept, applying a concept. Are we really made them really apply those particular concepts? So this is where we talk about that in a case where a case might be loaded with data, loaded with Excel sheets. Idea and objective is not to really make a student load with information. Idea is to, can he use an information? So this is where our role of a teaching learning person has really shifted. And probably we know that a lot of learning today is happening through various channels. So when you talk about a student today, student has got more access than us to best of the world's faculty, best of the world concepts. And he doesn't really find it much of an interest to really come into a classroom unless and until we create a classroom which is of interest to him. And that is where we are talking about that in our journey as a faculty members, we have moved from a lecture based study method to more of a collaborative learning, where we have some of these concepts where we, or maybe a business problem challenge, which has been thrown open to the student, and he has to solve it. So this is something which is now becoming interesting, and I'm sure most of you would have seen how your students have been participating into various challenges. So likewise, the way in the engineering, we have all those challenges drawn by those Kaggle and other companies. But at the same time, in a management perspective, we also have a lot of case study challenges. And you will be surprised that though we generally have cases, and when it comes to case study method, we say in management faculty, generally it is maybe a student at a postgraduate level, when he goes to a B school or a business department of a management institute, university, that he starts learning about cases. But you'll in my last 2 years, I have been engaged with SRCC college in Delhi, where we have been giving up some of the very, very good cases from our case center to the undergraduate student. Believe me, most of these graduates in last 2 years hardly attended any college sessions in a physical mode. Most of their education was happening online. And half of them very openly told me, madam, that we are there into a classroom, but hum sote rehte hain. And when we gave them a case study challenge, I was really surprised that the way they handled the case study challenge, and the case study was all about the pricing of petroleum products in India, and the variation or the fluctuation, volatile market of petroleum products in India. And I was really amazed to see there were almost 30 teams from that SRCC college participating in my case competition, and all of them had brilliant ideas, and they talked about concepts which even after passing from some of the premium B school students could not really talk about those concepts. They talked about international pricing method, they talked about the monetary pricing status, they talked about devaluation of rupee, everything that we could think about, they talked about it. They talked about digital currency, everything. And I'm sure a lot of these things which they were talking about were never taught into their curriculum, and I'm sure they must have learned a lot of these things outside the classroom. So this is where we're talking about that. Please don't underestimate your student. Put them into a very challenging situation, and maybe this is where the collaborative learning is something which is emerging. Collaborative learning not only from the student groups themselves, but a lot of collaborative learning when we create a learning platforms. So when we talk about adding up a student into a WhatsApp group platform, this WhatsApp group should not only be to exchange when the class is to be held, but these should be also where we are trying to discover or maybe solve some of the problems. And probably that's these are the collaborations where we find very, very interesting observations, very, very interesting directions to solve a problem which are coming in. And that is where our Indian students have the core, because a lot of them are very, very good in problem solving. By inheritance, in general, Indians have a very strong ability of problem solving. हमें problem दो तो हम solve कर लेते हैं. हम तो हर चीज में problem देखते हैं. And when you give us a problem, we have an innovative way to solve the problem. So this is where the learning method is becoming more relevant. And I'm sure those of you who are from the engineering college would appreciate that these problem-based learning and project-based learning are some of the things which are of more interest to your students. And this is also where we are trying to really make sure that we try to build up certain abilities into a student. And generally, we have been talking about the case method, and we have been talking about the project-based approach into the case method, where we're trying to say that as a faculty member, what are we trying to build up? We are trying to build up the analytical skill of a student. So when you talk about theory is something which, of course, we believe he has to be taught and he has to learn. But a lot of these theories have to be learned by the students and to be discussed into a classroom. Rather than we introducing him to a theory, our approach should be that we should encourage them to a level where they discover a theory, and we then analyze a particular theory, and we build up an analytical mindset for a student to appreciate that particular module. So one of our major tasks as a faculty member should be where we are trying to build up this analytical skill with him, that he's been able to analyze. There is a situation, and can he identify a problem? If he can identify a problem, that is the first stage where he has done good. Once he has identified a problem, is he able to identify the alternatives? That what can be the ways to solve a problem? If he has been able to do so, then he has cleared the second stage of his learning. And if he is able to pick up the right method to solve a problem, he has a execution plan ready, then I think we have done a very fantastic job. So that is where we say, we as a faculty member, we need to make them understand how to analyze a problem. That is the analytical skill, understand a problem, analyze a problem. Come up with alternatives, take up a decision. When it comes to generally our Indian mindset, we always see a problem, but we do not want to really take up a call for it. So then that is where our decision-making skills have not been honed into our colleges, because in our colleges we were not encouraged to first to ask questions, secondly to solve a problem, or take the onus of our responsibilities. So we don't own a responsibility. And that is why our decision making skills are really very poor. So when it comes to this is some of the things which we can strengthen, and I think case method is one of the strongest way to do it. Yeah. Hello, any questions here? Hello.
Sorry, ma'am, that was a disruption. I have muted that person.
Okay, no issues. I thought there was a question there, so I thought I'll answer it. So the third skill which we want to really develop into a student is what we call as an application skill. That is where he should be able to understand how this concept would be applied. So I'm sure a lot of you coming from engineering colleges would be talking about AI and machine learning. How many of you are actually into teaching up these concepts into your engineering or colleges or management departments? I see Dr. R.I. Minu. You are one who is teaching up AI and ML into your institution.
Yes, ma'am. We are from computer science department, so we used to teach those technology for our students. And
great. So when it comes to these technologies, these are some of the things which are very, very strong as far as the concepts are concerned. Now, when it comes to really looking into the larger perspective, that these are very core concepts, but how do I apply, or where do we really apply this particular concept? This is something which a student has to understand. So can AI and ML be used into the learning process? If yes, how can you really find this application? This is a task, a challenge which I can ideally any engineering student can handle, because he's already into the system where he's learning, and he can really think about as to how the application of AI and ML would happen into a teaching learning environment. And probably this is what when we find that when we talk about this application part of it and where all you are going to apply it, that ignites a student. That now he starts now thinking about it. Maybe he wants to write some kind of a program which is a AI ML based, and probably he has got some past data to feed in and probably show you the results. So that is something which is the need of the day, where you are able to make them understand a concept and actually apply a concept. And when they start applying a concept, they understand what exactly is the concept all about, what are the major strengths of that particular concept, and how this is to be understood from a bigger perspective, where the application orientation has to come in. So concept in itself would be of no use unless and until we are able to demonstrate a student that how this concept has to be applied, and to make them into execution plan. This is something which gives them a hands-on confidence that they not only know the theory, but they are able to apply it very well. The third thing which we would ideally want to develop is where we're talking about the communication skills. And when we talk about communication skill, that is, we find that generally Indian students are good in written communication, because that is something which we are generally doing for passing our examination and everything. We are good in it. But it's oral communication where we find a lot of time it is not a language problem, but it is a confidence problem where we are lacking into really presenting up our ideas well. Why? Because we get very, very little opportunity as a student in a classroom to really discuss or speak up. So maybe generally our classrooms are where we have almost 60 students into a classroom, and in a 60 student classroom, maybe 3, 4 or 5 of them are 10 of them are recognized by the faculty members. Rest of them are heard in a classroom, because generally as a faculty we might be teaching maybe to 2-year students, and maybe we are teaching up 3 to 4 batches. So I mean, getting to know 200 odd students in a batch is very, very tough. So you don't really get a one-to-one connect, and especially into this pandemic situation, we hardly knew. For us, student was just a name on a black box, the way it is now for me. So I don't know you much. So how can I really connect with you? This is something which is a very, very tough situation. And since the student is not getting an opportunity to speak, his oral communication is something which is a big, big challenge. But when you put them into a situation where they have to speak, they would initially be hesitant about it, but slowly and gradually you will find them speaking. And maybe in the first few sessions that, or maybe first few classes, they might be hesitant and may not be able to bring forth their core idea to you. But slowly and gradually you will find that if you do it over a period of semesters into an institution, these skills actually get enhanced into a student. And by the time he's into their final semester, he is far more clear as to what he has to speak. So those all peripheral ideas, they get diluted, and the central idea is something which he starts speaking about it. So this is a skill which takes time to develop, and probably this is very, very important for us as a faculty member, that we do not only teach core concepts, but we build up certain skills with the student, because this is something which he's really going to appreciate once he's passed from the institution. Of course, we build up very strongly with the case method. Generally, case method is something which is a time-bound activity. So in a classroom, maybe I have a 50 minutes class. So I give them a case to read and solve in just 50 minutes. So his time management becomes very important. And then we also tell them that 15 minutes for reading the case, and then another 30 minutes for really discussion into the case. And maybe if I've got, as a faculty, as a facilitator, I've got some slides to show, I would be talking about some of those things and maybe concluding the discussion in just 50 minutes. So as a faculty member, I would be very focused into what we are going to do in this 50 minutes that I have with the student. But at the same time, I would want him to really understand the importance of time. So in this time frame, he has to really do so very strongly. When we use case method and project-based teaching, this time management skill is something which gets honed up into a faculty, into a student. At the same time, he also learns how to really behave with others, empathize with them, understand the viewpoint for others. Because a lot of time what happens is that, as I said, we have in India, we have a unidirectional learning where a faculty teacher speaks into a classroom. Most of the students are very silent about it. There might be 2 or 3 people who would be maximum speaking into a classroom in a session. Rest of them are very quiet. And half of them do not ask question, because first they are hesitant to ask question. Secondly, some of them, they believe ki ab to 10 minutes baki hai, why should I be asking a question? Unnecessarily, the class would be getting lingered on. Let the faculty finish. So they don't ask question. And since they do not ask questions, they do not appreciate the power of questioning. But when it comes to teaching learning methodology, when you look into all our ancestors who have been very, very strong into the learning concepts, they always say that power of questioning is very, very important. And power to understand another person's perspective is also very, very important. So you have to really make them understand the perspective of other person. How is he looking into a problem? So your problem solving method might be very, very different from some other person's method. So if the Excel problem that I talked about, that if I have to really search for some people who are look-alike people, so what are the methods which I can use? So somebody would use a sort function, or somebody will use a VLOOK function, but both of them or many of them would solve the problem, but their way to solve the problem would be very different, and each of them method might be equally good. So that is where we're talking about the empathy, that maybe there might be better things. Some other colleague in my classroom knows it better. So this is something which we want to really develop. And then the interpersonal skill, creative skills, the written communication. These are some of the things which are very, very strongly needed for us as a faculty member to really develop within a student. And I'm sure most of you would appreciate that these skills can be developed with very strong when we have the interactive classrooms. So over a period of time, what we have actually done is that maybe this is where we bring in the beauty that if you are using up some of the case methods in your classroom, these cases can be of various type. As I said, it can be just an opening question. So this opening question can be that there has been a fraud in a bank. And the fraud what should be the fraud reduction approach for a banking system. So what are the technologies we can use for a fraud reduction? So I pick up some of the fraud which might have happened recently in some of the leading banks, and I take that expert from the information from maybe a newspaper, build up a scenario around it. The scenario building can be just maybe a 50 words or a 100-word opening paragraph kind of a thing for a student to understand that this is a fraud which has happened with a bank. And I am trying to now make student learn more about, and I'm trying to teach him the fraud deduction concepts. And I'm trying to teach him a lot of the concepts behind, which are very, very technical concepts. And I'm trying to make him understand and appreciate that this is where a lot of theories that we have been talking about into our classrooms are being applied. So this is something which I would be building up into a student, that how do we really look into a problem. So problems which are generally engineering and a management student would be facing a real world problem would be related to some of the organization. And this problem solving approach is something which we need to really develop into him, where he starts understanding, okay, ye to kya wala concept tha? Okay, this is where we have to understand. This is actually a situation where this concept is being challenged. And to really understand it and apply it, these are the models which can become very, very handy, because this is something which was taught to us, and probably this is something which is proven. So this was a theory which was proven, tested, and probably it can apply into this condition also. So this is where the connection between theory learning comes in. And if we're choosing up as we said, that we need to be very, very creative as far as our teaching is concerned today. So maybe a lot of time we have got very good books and very good case studies with which comes with the textbook. So generally in our management and in engineering, you'll find that every chapter is generally, there is an opening widget which is there, which talks about a particular situation, and the concepts which are covered into that chapter are coming from the widget is giving me an indication as to what exactly can you expect in terms of the theories which would be there. And generally in the end of our chapter, a textbook chapter, you have some kind of a problem, or maybe a caselet, or maybe a big case which is there. So these are generally when a faculty has written, or a person has written a textbook, he would have actually visualized that how the teaching learning would happen. So how this theory has to be applied, looked into a real situation, and that's where he has built up a case around the concepts which were there into a chapter. So if you are not a very seasoned case author, or a case writer, or a case teacher, the best way is to pull up a case from your textbook. So generally a textbook case is something which is very easy to really teach, because you know that this case deals with these concepts which were part of this particular chapter. So once you have taught a particular chapter, you are able to apply that particular case and you will able to monitor and gauge as to how the student respond to it, and did they really understand these concepts. So this is something which is very, very easy to do because you are not doing much. The case was already there, the theory, the concept was already there, which you have already taught. Now you are looking into the application part of it. So as a faculty member, this is one of the easiest way to start your journey into as a case method teacher or using up cases into the classroom. A lot of time what happens is that these very small real life situations can be very strong learning tools. So a lot of time what we might have ourselves witnessed a particular situation, and when we were into that particular situation, we used certain concepts. So this your own experience, which if it has been documented in form of a real case, it becomes a very strong tool, teaching tool for you. So as a management faculty, we generally encourage that go to industry and speak to people, go and see what happens into industry. So this gives you a lot of understanding as to what is happening. So generally, when we have been talking about engineering concepts, I'm trying to bring in some of the relevance to the engineering students here. So some of the time, in the recent time, we saw a lot of emphasis being given to the EV vehicles, electric vehicles in India. I think a lot of government initiatives have been there towards in electric vehicles. But at the same time, we find a lot of news which were coming in last 1 month. We had a couple of news which were related to the EV vehicle catching fire. Now, I'm sure most of you would have read about it. Now, this is something which becomes a very interesting way to really teach them into teach a student about the electric vehicles and talking about how the electric vehicle ecosystem works. Maybe that's where I want to really take him to the concept of the batteries, and we want to really teach them how this whole system operates. So this is which is a very, very core engineering concept. But I am trying to bring in a real life situation in which there is a challenge. There is a challenge in terms of that, yes, government has put a lot of emphasis on EV. EV is something which is coming to India in a big way. We have seen a lot of automobile companies coming up with hybrid cars and also EV scooters and other things which have come in. But the challenge is that when they come to our road, we are finding a lot of issues. Some of the issues are related to the fire system. Some of the issues are related to the charging points. So when you talk about the EV system in India, what are the major challenges? Now, student is being asked to discover what are the major challenges as far as getting into the concept of EV vehicles are concerned. So a lot of them would then come back to you with very, very core engineering concepts that EV has to have an ecosystem in which we have to have vehicles, we have to have battery systems, we need to have charging points, and the whole ecosystem has to be developed. So are we ready for it? Are we ready for getting up mass consumers going for EV? Or is it just at a very, very introductory stage to build up the ecosystem? What are the things which are required? So now we have put him into a challenging situation. This is already, it can be converted into a project-based thinking concept for a student. So that's where we are trying to say that a lot of these cases can be actually from the real life situation. Hope you are all there with me. You relate with this concept.
Yes, ma'am. I am there.
Yes, yes.
So you're able to relate this EV thing, because I think this is something again a very big revolutions which are happening into the engineering side. And again, once we were likewise, I mean, we face a lot of issues when we are doing up the writing up cases. So one of a very interesting case which actually came to us was when I was doing a workshop with GAIL, that is the Gas Authority of India. And that was the time when Government of India and our president announced that we would be going with doing away with single-use plastic. So single-use plastic was something which probably I think any student of chemical engineering would very strongly know about it. Now we have been talking about again, and even in environmental student would be very closely associated with. So we have been talking about single-use plastic, and but why single-use? Only why single-use plastic was the target. So this is one of the question which was there with from a management student with no engineering background. Why is so much of concern about the single-use plastic? So a lot of now the real world issues comes into it. So with a ban on single-use plastic, a lot of questions were raised. Now a lot of these questions then bring you to the concept of what exactly is a single-use plastic. How is this particular plastic being designed? What is the chemical formula behind it? Why is it so important to understand the degradation process of it? How does this get degraded into, and what happens with it when it is thrown out into the garbage bins? So this happened, and this was a policy decision which was taken by Government of India. But what is the implication for this policy decision? So we had all people from various walks of life reacting to it. I mean, a lot of social workers talked about it, that they will be doing up a garbage cleaning process. But then we have big organizations like Coke and Pepsi, which were strongly challenged. Now they were very strongly challenged, and this turned out to be a very big challenge for them, because now they were in a situation that how do they really take care of their distribution system. Their core emphasis is on to the PET bottles that they use. Now, how do they make sure that they don't really come into this domain of single-use plastic? And then we were doing a workshop with GAIL, and then we came to understand that a complete unit of GAIL was under a challenge here, because primarily the products they were making at this plant was all single-use plastic. So this was a very major challenge for a big organization, a PSU like GAIL, where they had to really reinvent the whole process of how to they really think about it. So this is a very strong engineering problem and a very strong management problem coming from a real life situation. It was then, I mean, debated, discussed into by all the GAIL participants. Big challenge came in, and a lot of discussions happened around it. We were from AMA India Case Research Center. We were just documenting the problem there, because we knew that we are not going to being the problem solvers. Somebody else is going to solve it for us. But what are the alternatives? So we were trying to build up the case. We tried to build up the whole case around it. Now, this is something which is a very big challenge. So now this comes into something which is onto sustainability, the chemical concept of it, the distribution challenges. Every aspect of it is a very important thing. So single-use plastic is a big thing in India. Likewise, when you talk about we have talked about the EVs. We have also talked about I mean, when it comes to our core topics which can be of very interesting discussions is, again, when we are talking about these automations. So this is something which in our engineering colleges we are trying to really teach students in typically into the computer sciences, a lot of automations, and we're talking about the industrial revolution 4.0. So this is something which is again a core engineering concepts, and probably AR, VR, something, everything is being covered into the industrial revolution 4.0. Now, how much of this is actually a reality for organizations in India? That itself is a big question mark to us, and also a big opportunity for us. Now, we can have, when we were discovering and discussing with a lot of organizations, and they talked about it, that you're talking about automation. This is not industrial 4.0 is already in. I mean, we have been doing it for so many years. What is so new about it? Though it's become a hype concept, and we've been taught into management colleges and also the engineering colleges, but this is something which they say that they have been using up for quite some time, and probably the technology life cycle transition is such that it takes some more years to really give a big name to a concept. The concept already starts. and then you give a big name to it, the way that we have given a big name to machine learning now. So a lot of cases, when we try to really bring up the real life situation, they become very, very interesting for a student to be taught even into an engineering colleges. So typically when we had few very good interesting cases which were again around the solar power, and then we had a very strong case which was around the component parts, and typically those solar cells. So how does we in engineering college generally we are talking about solar cells, we are talking about in our electrical engineering department, we have been talking about it into other departments also. We have been talking about these concepts, the concept of how, what exactly is a solar cell, how does it actually maintains it, gets utilized into it, how does the whole plant gets set up. Now, the challenge which we from a management perspective that we really bring in, or maybe the real life perspective, is that we have got very few suppliers for these type of products. So where are the manufacturing units? What are the things which are needed to set up a manufacturing unit of such kind? What are the engineering competencies that we should know about it? So this is something which now becomes a very, very interesting case study to be taught into a scenario where we are talking about use of alternative energy, and we are talking about these scenario buildings about a big organization, big firm taking up a big way into solar revolution. And probably I think today the major Indian power sector companies have already taken up the transition, and we have been talking about net zero and all of other concepts. So all these concepts ultimately are related. I mean, when you look into it, they would be all related to each other. But how do we really bring a big picture to a student? This is something which is important. So maybe that's where we say that as a faculty member, we have to understand what is our core responsibility. And we have to understand the profile of a student. What do we teach him into a first year, and what do we teach him when he is about to exit from a management college or engineering college is very, very important. What is the way he need to understand the real big picture about it? The core concept that we have taught to him, the core subject that we have taught to him, how do they become important and relevant to him in his real life, and how does they fit into in his corporate journey? This is something again which is important, and probably that is where we have been saying that when you build up the whole scenario with the cases, this is something which becomes very, very easy. So and when we talk about some of the cases, as I said, some of the cases might be very complex. So maybe when you talk about a concept like single-use plastic, this is not just about taking up a shift and maybe from tomorrow we ban single-use plastic, but there would be huge lot of implications around it. And why did we really take up a call of single-use plastic? To solve a bigger environmental issue. But are we really solving up an environmental issue? Is single-use plastic the only solution to solve up our major environmental issues related to sustainability, climate change? Or there are many others? These are the things which we need to really make a student in any department of engineering or management to understand. Because after all, what we are heading to? We are heading to three major concepts which would be important from a human or humanity perspective. One is environment, second is sustainability, and third is the governance. So these are ESG things that we have been talking about, which are becoming very, very important. So in whatever subjects we might be talking about, ultimately environment, sustainability, and how we really do the governance part of it becomes very important. And probably this is a time where we need to ignite our students in both engineering and management department about the larger goals which they need to fulfill. The ESG goals which have been set up by UN, and what are the deadlines for it. These are some of the things we need to educate him so that he is able to understand that why are we moving into a particular direction, why the systems are moving into a particular direction, and what are the technology options that we have. So from all the technology options, which is one which is most environmental friendly is something which we really need to make him appreciate. So this is the task as a faculty member, not only to teach the concepts, but really make him understand these issues and probably use some of the cases depending upon how you really see to it, as a tool for it. So maybe a typical organization which I want to point at this point in time is how an organization like Shell or an organization like NTPC has transformed themselves. Shell, being an oil company, has transformed itself to an energy company. So this transition from oil company to energy company is something which is very deep thought. So being one type of product company and dealing with the offshore refineries, distribution of oils, to an energy company, which is a very comprehensive concept, it's a big transition. Similarly, when you look into NTPC, very strongly transformed itself from an energy generation company, which was basically a coal core-based energy sector company, to a company which is more now heading towards net zero and creating carbon footprints. A very major transformation in the organization engineering concepts which has happened, and it has not happened in one day. It has taken up long. So maybe we can talk about a complete linear study about how the organization has transformed itself into a processes and how the vision of the organization has completely changed. These are some of the cases which we need to really teach to every student today, because these are cases, these are typical organizations which are really thinking in a big way. And probably this is something which I thought I would share today. And I think I've done my major task of making you all understand in my 1 hour 30 minutes discussion with you, as to that whatever we teach, we need to have very strong idea that concept of theory, analytical, these needs to be built in together, so that we are able to take a student, drive a student to something which helps him to sustain in his longer run. So theoretical concept built up or discussed through building up his analytical mindset is something which is very important for us as faculty member. So in this FDP, I thought maybe when I started my FDP, I thought I had more management student faculty members joining me today. But then I could realize that a lot of you are from the engineering background. So that's why I've twisted a little bit of my discussion. I hope you could gain something about from this particular discussion. I hope I could draw some value and some insights to you. I look forward for you to interact with us. If you have want to develop some case studies, want to learn how to teach through case studies, you're most welcome, because we at IMA, we run a couple of workshops around it. So anybody who is interested into it, they can always reach out to us. And probably Dr. Mukesh would always be there to help us out into this process. So I would say this is something which we have left out my contact details. I can be reached out at my office email ID, and maybe this is something which I thought would be necessary. So over to you, Dr. Mukesh. I think I've done with my session.
Thank you, ma'am. With your permission, can we take a few questions, like if someone is interested?
Sure, sure.
Yeah. So, dear faculty members, if you have any doubt or any question in your mind, please feel free to ask to ma'am. Anything you would like to share with ma'am or us, I mean, about the whole session, and what did you understand?
Dr. Mukesh, I would also like to tell that this is a faculty development program, and we try to, in our faculty development programs, what we try to do is that our objective is how do we enhance ourselves as a faculty member, and where we try to see that how the 3 core things which a faculty does, teaching, research, and consultancy, are taken care.
Right.
And if you have any questions related to any 3 of the topic, please do reach out, speak here.
Yes, please. The forum is open for discussion now. If you have any question, please feel free to ask. I think, ma'am, there are no questions from the audience. Okay. Then, ma'am, thank you very much. You have really very well articulated the evolving trends in research. And it was really an insightful and knowledgeable session. I thoroughly enjoyed your session. In fact, I remained glued to my seat because there was so much coming from your side, and I didn't want to miss. In fact, this is the scenario for all the faculty members, and I'm really thankful for the valuable thoughts you have shared with us. And I think this information will go along a long way with all the faculty members in their life, and it was really a learning session for all of us. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming in, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you so much, and thank you, sir, for inviting me, and thank you, participants, for listening to me. Enjoy your workshop. Good luck.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you. Dear participants, thank you very much. Thank you, all of you, for joining this session. We are signing off for the day. We are done for today's two wonderful sessions, and we are now moving on tomorrow to the fifth day of faculty development program. And tomorrow morning we have a session by Professor Dr. Sandeep Rana, and he would be speaking on the topic universal human values. And in the afternoon, we have a session by Dr. Arvind Sharma, and he will be talking about the skill and curriculum gap in higher education and role of NEP in it. So we'll be meeting you again tomorrow morning. Till then, goodbye. Have a nice day. I wish you happiness, success, and prosperity. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your patient listening. Can leave the meeting now. We'll see you tomorrow again in the morning.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Please share the attendance link if possible, sir.
Yeah, okay. I am sharing it again in the
Thank
chat
you, sir.
box. Just have a look.